is I would memorize every single case that the professor would talk about. Get the syllabus, I would memorize every single case, and I would memorize 2 sentences about that case. When I took that test, I would bring up the fact that I knew every single case. And my essays looked like every single line I was citing a case. It was underlined all over the place. So the very first impression that the grader would get is, oh my God, this guy knows 200 cases. So even if I'm wrong, the professor might take some pity on me. Like, wow, this guy really, he may not be able to analyze anything, but he really knows his stuff because he was able to memorize all of these cases. So right now what you're probably thinking is, okay, you can memorize all Shakespeare's plays, but the law is a little bit trickier. So how do you translate that? So let's talk about the law. Let's talk about warrants, criminal procedure, and the law around a search warrant. So if I've got that test, and you can see that there's a warrant issue, I want to prove to the grader that I know every single major case about warrants, even if it doesn't apply. And I want to do a citation underlined on every single one of those cases. The first thing that I know about warrants is a cat purring. Cats. Cats is the first case that discusses warrants. And a warrantless search is per se unreasonable. Now, there's obviously some exceptions that are shot through the warrantless search issues, but we all know that a warrantless search is per se unreasonable. Let's say that this was a case in the fact pattern that involved a warrant that was actually obtained. Why wouldn't you at least just put that down that you know that? We all know that warrantless searches are per se unreasonable. So in this case, they obtained a warrant per cats, right? So the way you would be thinking about taking the test is you're like, well, I only want to talk about what applies, but why don't talk about what doesn't apply as well? Because then you're just proving to the grader that you know what cats is. And you know that there's that relationship. Okay, who's holding the cat? Bill Gates. Illinois v. Gates is the next case. He's boarding a submarine, substantial, and there has to be a substantial basis for a warrant to be executed. It's based on the totality of the circumstances. The submarine is filled with total cereal. Thomas Paine, common sense, is on top of the submarine, and he's shouting, like in the scene in Forrest Gump, bring it on, is that all you got? But anyway, that's in my brain, that's what I'm thinking about. Thomas Paine is up there, it's common sense. So whether or not a warrant is going to be executed by a judge, 3 things, according to Gates. There has to be a substantial basis, totality of circumstances, there has to be common sense underlying the warrant. All right, so now we're talking. Now you're not just throwing black letter law out, you're actually citing cases. You're a badass gonna be lawyer. You actually know the case. You know it's Gates. Okay, cool. Where do they take the sub to? They take it to a county fair. And I'm thinking of the spinner, the Spinelli. That's the next case. They're one of those things that kind of goes around in circles. All right, at the basis of knowledge, Spinelli stands for the basis of knowledge, which in my mind is sort of the base of the whirligig machine, the spinner machine, basis of knowledge. And then what do? You verify that the little bar is locked you into the spinner before it goes. So basis of knowledge, and that you actually have to have some verifiable information to back up a warrant. The veracity, you're verifying it, veracity. Now you're gonna have to know more than just this, but this helps you go through that chain. You guys should already know what I'm talking about. But now you're just going through the cases and what they stand for and what the black letter law is. And so you just have the case name, Spinelli, and there's 2 things that you've got to talk about. If you're going to cite Spinelli, you better talk about basis of knowledge, you better talk about veracity. And you underline it. That's proving that you know the black letter law. So you say in Spinelli, court decided that for a warrant to be valid, that it has to be based on a basis of knowledge, and there has to be a way to verify that the information that supports the warrant is accurate. And there's an element of veracity. Okay, good. Move on to the next one. What if it's a carny, a disreputable carny that is running this machine, and he's getting paid to run the machine? He's a paid informant. Carnies are what? What's a circus carny? Do you know what a carny is? Does anybody know what a carny is? Guy who runs the show?
Yeah.
Okay. Are they reputable?
Not normally.
Not normally, no. Okay. So a carny is the case. And he is a paid informant. And he is, because he's paid, it's basically per se unreasonable to use a paid informant. So I'm putting everything together. As you leave the fair, you're driving to Maryland in a truck with a bunch of other people in the car. Maryland stands for the idea that a passenger in a vehicle could also be subject to a warrant if there is a common enterprise. What's on top of the truck? The USS Enterprise, Star Trek, common enterprise. So the basis, if someone gets pulled over in a vehicle and they're a passenger, well, they could be subject to a search warrant. Their property could be, on the basis that they're involved with someone who's doing something illegal, and people that drive around together might be engaged in a common illegal enterprise. They're driving to Maryland. They don't get there because they hit all these bars in the road. Ibarra. Ibarra stands for the proposition that if you go into a residence on a search warrant, you can't frisk people. So the bars stop you from frisking somebody. You can't pat down the person on the other side of the bar as much as you'd like to. From that, I think of, okay, you're at Maryland, and then all of a sudden you take a flight over to Stanford. Stanford is the case that stands for the proposition that the search warrant must be particular, and that you can search the residence belonging to a third party so long as the fruits and instrumentalities of the crime can be found there. So it's third party searches of properties are acceptable. And I think third party, who lives in Stanford? Ralph Nader. He's a third party candidate, Green Party. What's he got growing? Grow is the next case. What does he have growing in his closet? A bunch of marijuana, all right, because he lives in Stanford. Good for him. All right. And GROW stands for the proposition that the search warrant must be specific, and it must be particular to I think of species, like the species of marijuana. In particular, there's all these little particles that are in the dirt that are growing the marijuana, specific and particular. You know, if I go and I revisit that every once in a while, I'm not going to forget that. I got it. If I wake up the next day, do I have any anxiety whatsoever about whether or not I'm going to be able to remember search warrants? No, none. It's there. And then basically all I would have to do to make sure that I've got it is get a piece of paper out, and I think I would go something like this. Kitty cat, nerd for Bill Gates, okay, submarine, Thomas Paine, total serial. So this is fun. This is not me having to go over it over and over and over again. I'm just kind of going from 1 to 2 to 3, and then up and around the chain all I want. Spinelli. Got the little whirligig here. And you don't have to be an artist at all. If I wanted to, I could. That's not the idea. The idea is that each one of these things represents something in your mind. And that it actually, if you spend a lot of time drawing it out, you're undermining what you're trying to do because you're just trying to create a very, very visual event that actually occurred. So the little things that you're putting here are just helping you. There's the Carney, Maryland, Ibarra, take the flight to Stanford, and then you got your marijuana for GROW. Boom, done. This took me 10 minutes. It actually took me less than that to get down. Now the cool thing is that once you have that, then you can actually read the cases, you can actually get into the cases, and now you've got an association with that case. So when I think GROW, I think marijuana, now I'm going to read that case, and I can just You don't want to create a little visual for every single piece of black letter law. I just have a framework now that I can use. So when I'm taking the test, believe me, if there's a warrants question, I'm going to hit Katz, Gates, Spinelli, Carney. I'm going to cite, boom, 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 down the line, every single one of those cases I know, even if it's a, let's just say, for example, that the informant isn't paid. Your temptation would be not to bring up Carney because the informant wasn't paid. Why wouldn't you just say, because the informant wasn't paid, Carney does not apply? Man, you're smart. You're proving to the grader that you know this, and that you're not searching for the answers. You're just spitting out case law like you're a freaking machine. You're a badass. You're putting all this stuff down, and it's actually fun. When I was taking the bar, I had a great time because I knew I had all the cases, and so I spent a lot of time just kind of regurgitating the cases I have, underlined, boom, 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 boom. And then while I was doing that, what was I thinking about?